So, an impressive birthday party for the child you gave birth to.
Yes.
I gather from the beginning of it that you took advantage of an opportunity, several opportunities, with the newspaper strike and no place to put reviews, and the presence of your wife and Robert Lowell as your neighbors, and that situation, taking advantage of that. But it sounded like it started out as a review of books, but it has become an intellectual, philosophical conscience for the intellectual world.
Well, that would be inevitable.
That would be inevitable? Please.
I mean, all we know, all we are is in books.
Please keep the microphone close.
Books are us. That's who we are. And without them, and without taking them seriously, we would be lost. Books are everything. And that was our position from the beginning. We thought that. And we took them very seriously, as you can see when you saw how Bob was working and how Barbara was working, though she wasn't filmed doing that. The New York Review eschewed any ideology, any fixed ideas about how things ought to be or not be. We were only concerned with presenting the wisdom that we had vowed to organize and publish. I don't think any of us had an ideological preference. We weren't communists, we weren't anti-communists, we were none of those things. The joke that we used to hear in those days was about the orator in Union Square who was attacked by a policeman. The policeman began hitting him, and he said to the policeman, "Don't hit me, I'm not a communist, I'm an anti-communist." And the policeman said, "I don't care what kind of communist you are." So that was more or less our attitude toward ideology of any kind, and it remains that way. The question arises, what will happen after Bob? But Bob is immortal, so it's an idle question. He'll always be there.
And it's nice to think that your wife would have also been there forever. Your wife, as you say, she was not filmed that much, but in the speaking at the 50th anniversary celebration, there was a great deal of credit given to your wife for what she did. Because
they were literally co-editors. When we decided that evening with the Lowells that we would start this paper during the newspaper strike, I said, the indispensable factor here has to be Bob Silvers. He has to be willing to come and join us. And I thought maybe he wouldn't because he had a very good job at Harper's Magazine. But when I called him the following morning and asked if he would be interested in such a thing, he said yes on one condition, that Barbara and I edit it together. And that became a partnership. Not always an easy partnership, by the way, but a very productive one. Unfortunately, there wasn't much film about Barbara for the purpose of this documentary, but she and Bob were in every way equals.
did she work in much the same way as Bob did? Did they work similarly with writers?
Yes, except that she worked at 57th Street and lived on 67th Street on the west side. And she had to leave every afternoon at 5 o'clock till the children came home from school. And then at 7 or 8, she would go back to work with Bob.
It's incredibly impressive. It becomes, in many ways, a movie about the editor. And that's why it's more sad that she had died in 2006. Did she work all the way up until she died?
Oh, yeah. And the other omission was David Levine, who was crucial. And you saw his work in the film. He should have. the film should have paid more attention to him and showed more of his work, because it was
The illustrator.
It was integral to what the paper was about.
David Levine, the illustrator.
David Levine, the illustrator. You saw some of it in the film. I think that was an oversight. As for Barbara, there was no film. There was no footage to work with. A few stills. That's about it.
Right, and as a film about Bob and about the magazine, but it's as interpreted by the way the editor works and the way the writers acknowledge the editor's contribution to what they're able to do, and the editor was giving thanks to the writers for the way they work. In other organizations, like the New Yorker, for instance, the editor becomes sort of identified with it, like Harold Ross, William Shawn.
Right.
And now, as you said, what is the succession? Is there any thought to succession for someone to take over?
There doesn't need to be one, because Bob will always be there. At least he'll be there as long as I'm around.
Would that were true.
No one talks about it, and so let's not even discuss it here.
Okay.
Bob is brilliant, and I've never seen him distressed or angry or short with people, or always the way he is in that film. Always curious, a brilliant editor. I mean, I'm an editor myself, but I've benefited enormously from the pieces I've written for the New York Review. I wouldn't dream of publishing anything in that paper without his having gone over it. He was a born editor and a polymath. There's nothing he doesn't know. There's no subject that's alien. He doesn't have any ideology, as I said, and except that books are everything, and they have to be treated with enormous respect.
Oh, I think that, as I said before, that it is definitely the mention that books had become smaller in the typeface than the New York Review, because there are, of course, books, but there's so many ideas, and it seems like the dedication is to the idea of truth, of what is the real truth of the matter.
Well, somebody did once write an article years ago saying that the word books in the title and the cover had shrunk, but it hasn't. He checked again and said it's the same size. It's always been that. But no, I think Bob was right to open the magazine to general intellectual work, not simply book reviews, but basically it's a review of books, because that's where things are happening.
Right, and it's wonderful that the title of the film captures what's going on here, which was spoken by the man in the beginning, the 50-year argument.
Yeah.
And it is through this kind of discussion and debate. Intellectual, articulate, moral debate.
That's what it is, trying to see what's happening and understand the world and know where we are and who we are. Sometimes that's an awful thing to find out, by the way, who we are, but that's what the New York Review is about.
And unbelievably impressive for that, because so much of journalism has devolved into ideological positions and pitch points, and to have anybody still maintain that the truth is the most important thing is remarkable and necessary.
It's who he is. I mean, it wasn't a conscious decision by any means, but it's who he is and who Barbara was and who we all are. Look at the nation, not the nation, the New Republic, what's happened to it. Because it's been run by one ideologue after another, yanked in this direction and that direction. And every time that happens, you lose readers.
And more important, I mean, to a publisher, you losing readers is important, but to the rest of us, losing that ideology, that lack of ideology, that commitment to the truth and the commitment to justice and to the moral high ground is absolutely essential. And if you lose that, then the free press loses that, we lose that debate, then all is lost as far as I could tell.
Well, I think it's going to go on forever.
Well, let's hope that it does. Let's certainly hope that it does. Just before I turn it over to some questions from the audience, which I can repeat for you in case you don't hear them. But I'm also an editor, have been an editor for a long time, the Southampton Press, and my family was involved with the New Yorker.
Sure,
Gardner Botsford was
right,
an editor at the New Yorker. So I was really, really gratified to see how disorganized his office was. Because clearly, only clear thought comes from an office that looks like that, because that's, every great editor's office I ever saw looks like that. So really impressive. Any questions, please? Anywhere, right up there.
If anyone has an argument with the Times nowadays, the public opinion, the public editor will answer the how or why. But in the time when the New York Review challenged the Times' book review, how was that handled? Was there a debate? Was there a give and take?
Okay, he's saying that when the Times when the public disagrees with the Times on anything, there's a public editor who answers these questions.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, when the New York Review of Books came up against the Times book reviews, was there any debate between the two organizations? Was there any public discussion?
No. Neither side acknowledged the other.
Sounds good. Right here.
How has the readership changed over the years? I mean, are people reading as much as they did before?
How has the readership changed over the years? Is there as many people reading it now as before?
Well, Barbara decided at one point that 140,000 people would be just about right. And to go to the expense of adding more would be a waste of money. It wouldn't increase the ad rates and so on. So it's still 140,000. It just stays there. And whenever somebody dies, someone steps in his place.
That's a great way to do business.
The renewal rate, which is the crucial number in the magazine business, is about 95, 96%, which means most people aren't dying.
More power to them. Obviously, because they read the New York Review of Books. So that's the answer for all of us. Some more questions in the back, up there.
Covering 50 years in less than 2 hours is quite a feat in a film, and I just wonder if there's a moment that wasn't in the film, because I'm sure a lot of moments didn't make it in, that you wish was in there, you could have put another 5 minutes in.
Okay, so covering 50 years in just an hour-long documentary, you're missing a lot of different things. So she's wondering, did you have any specific moment or moments that you wish could have been in the film that weren't? Is there anything that stands out to you that you wished could have been in the film?
Well, the part I felt, as I said, there were two parts that I thought were inadequately covered. One of them is certainly David Levine, who was a great contributor to the success of the magazine, and a genius at caricaturing. And the other, of course, is Barbara. She wasn't there to be filmed, and she didn't like the camera. She didn't like having a picture taken or having movies made about her. So she was hardly present, but she was a major presence from the very beginning.
When was the shooting done? What years did they shoot the film?
Well, over the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of that was had already been shot.
Right, a lot of stock footage, exactly. Other questions? Anyone? What are your feelings now when you look at this film? How many times have you seen it?
This is the third time, I think.
Third time, okay. And does it sort of? Are you as amazed as we are by what it's become from what you started with, or is that you just thought this was always what it was going to be?
I mean, was I surprised that it worked as well as it did?
Are you surprised as it worked as well as it did?
No, I wasn't surprised at all. I thought it would be just what it became. I mean, how could it not be with Bob and Barbara and all the people they were working with?
Well, you must be incredibly proud, and we're all so grateful that you started it and that that it's going on and it will go on forever. I certainly hope so.
I think when you do a thing like this, you have to make certain assumptions about human beings, that they are capable of appreciating it, and not compromise on their behalf. And I think that's always been the position they took.
I think it's absolutely true, and not not talking down, not trying to over-explain, not
No,
going
no
too
doubt.
far, and getting at the truth way before a lot of other people do. I mean, that coverage of Egypt and Tahrir Square, and the coverage of the Wilding incident with Joan
Well,
Didion.
that was something, wasn't it?
That's incredible. I mean, when it came out that they were all vindicated, and that there was one voice in the wilderness at that
I
time.
remember when Joan did that. I was shocked.
No,
It made perfect sense. The press made it all up.
I know, and which is really scary for those of us that have worked at the press. But at any rate, thank you very, very, very much. What a great joy. Thank you so much.